Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Local Government Energy Audit, Application Navigation and Utility Bill Reading. We're going to go ahead and get started, so let me do a little bit of introduction work. Today's webinar is brought to you by New Jersey's Clean Energy Program and the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. My name is Jim Friedel, and I'm an Outreach Account Manager for New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, and I'll be acting as the facilitator for today's event. First, I'd like to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Today, we'll be taking attendees through the application process, and we'll be touching on specific areas that can benefit from some additional information. We will have attendees on mute throughout the presentation, but encourage you to submit questions as they come to you via the control panel on your screen. We'll address your questions in real time, and at the end of the presentation, we'll also ask for some additional questions if necessary. If we don't get to your questions live, or if you have more detailed questions that you would like answered, we'll be supplying you with the LGEA team's email address for further contact. And you can either provide your detailed questions to them or arrange for a call with one of the LGEA account managers. We will also be recording this webinar, and links to that recording will be provided once it's uploaded to the Clean Energy Learning Center website. All right, well, let me get to some introductions. Today, we are joined by Amanda Munch, who, like myself, is also from TRC. Amanda is an LGEA account manager and will be acting as application navigator during the webinar. She will be providing some details on the application and particulars on utility bills that will help you submit a complete and accurate application. Okay, before getting started, we'd first like to say that we understand what a challenging time it is for everyone, especially for businesses. We want to emphasize that New Jersey's Clean Energy Program is doing everything it can to support you during this period and through the recovery. Please know that, as always, account managers, program staff, and case managers are available to you to answer your questions. As all of you can appreciate, things are changing day by day and minute by minute. We may not have all the answers at our fingertips, but we'll do our best to get you the latest information. Now, a little bit about how the program is operated. Many of you on the call probably know TRC administers New Jersey's Clean Energy Program on behalf of the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. The funding for the program is supported or supplied through a line item fee that is on each regulated utilities billing statement called the Societal Benefits Charge, or in some cases designated as the SBC on your bill. As is the purpose of this webinar, a good deal of the Clean Energy Program's efforts is focused on educating the businesses, residents, municipalities, and school districts of the importance and financial benefits of being energy efficient. The aim is that through a combination of education and financial grants, the Clean Energy Program can provide an environment which encourages its constituents to invest in efficiency, which is an important part of reaching the governor's goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. So with that bit of background, I'm going to go ahead and hand off control of the webinar to Amanda so that she can take us through the presentation, the application, and a couple of utility bills. So Amanda, the presentation is all yours.
Thanks for the introduction, Jim. If everyone can see my screen, hopefully, it should be on the New Jersey's Clean Energy Program website. So what I'm going to do first is just take you through, and most of you might be familiar with this, and at the very bottom, you'll see the link for the LGEA application workbook. So you can just click on that, open, save. So here we are looking at the main page of the LGEA application. These three blue tabs require applicant entry, but just to quickly go over, we also have the application instructions tab, the tab that describes the local government energy audit program's program scope, terms and conditions. So just to give you a little tour. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of filling out every field within this application, if you're considering this program, there's just a couple things that you would want to keep in mind as to whether it's the best path forward for your entity. So who is filling out this application? If it's someone at the local school district or municipality, for instance, you would want it most of the time to be a facilities person, since they are the most knowledgeable of the buildings. And you would want to get the main person here. So a director, a business administrator can fill out the applicant information, but as to the building and utilities data tab, which we'll get to a little later, you would want a knowledgeable facilities person to be involved with the application. There's also an option for entities to use an architect or an ESCO to help them out with this, or the contractor, someone at the facility that is knowledgeable. They can go ahead and fill in their designated representative information here and be the main contact. So another thing you want to consider is the eligibility requirements. Does your entity fall into one of these? That's the baseline requirement for LGEA if you're falling into one of these categories. The second is, do your buildings come over the 200 kW marker as an average within the last annual utility data? And there are exceptions to that. And again, we're always here for you, the LGEA team. You can reach out to us if you open this application and you're not sure if this is the best path forward. We're happy to help you discuss that. So to get into this is pretty self-explanatory, and we've filled in as an example in red for you to make it easier to see. Now we get to the NIACS field, that stands for North American Industry Classification System. It's a 6-digit number, and the way that you find that would just be to go to this website. This is the home page. So there's a few ways you could do this. You could search by keyword in this box. If that's not bringing up what your entity type is, you can go to this reference file for a more broad view. So these are 2-digit codes. It gives you the broad categories for the entity type. So let's say you're a school district, you can click in here. Transportation, garage or parking or something like that, you can try to click in here. But for our example purposes, I'm going to type in school district. And that brings up the 6-digit code that you would enter on the application. Entity type, again, pretty self-explanatory. State agencies, local government, so that's schools, municipalities, county colleges, state colleges, private colleges, and nonprofits would qualify for this program. So here, I'm just going to briefly go through this. Has the entity previously applied and been approved by the local government energy audit program? So you would want to figure that out, since you can't participate if it's been less than 3 years since your last audit. But if it's been longer than that, we would happily have you come through and update that audit information. So these are drop downs. So yes, no, unsure. That's self-explanatory. Does the applying entity have an existing Energy Star portfolio manager account? So if the answer to this is yes, the answer to this is yes as well. And the reason why we ask that is so we can log into your old account if possible and update the information that's already there so you have a consistent picture. So let's say yes. Solar, this is a yes or no. On this tab, we get into a little more detail there. So these are all yes or no questions. Designated representative, like I said, if you're working with an architect, this would allow us to contact them and share information with them. So optional waivers. As I was saying, we do allow for some flexibility for buildings that come under the average peak of 200 kW. And I'll go into where to find that on the bills a little later. But for right now, let's just run through these waivers. And again, we have lots of discussions on the front end before entities even submit this application as to what these waivers mean. So if you are confused at all prior to even sending this in, we're happy to have a meeting with you. So ESIP, the Energy Savings Improvement Program, is run directly out of the Board of Public Utilities. And it's a financing mechanism that would allow public schools, municipalities, and state agencies to implement energy conservation measures without using any capital budget. And the LGEA program is a prerequisite for participation in this program. So the reason why that's a waiver is so we can allow all or most of the entity's buildings, even the ones that come under the 200 kW marker, to participate so they can get the full benefit of the ESIP funding. Master or campus metering. So that tends to be applicable for colleges where each building on the campus, it might look like on the bills like they all have one utility account number. The usage is sub-metered perhaps. So in that instance, we're unable to tell whether each individual building would come over the 200 kW. So in that case, we just say, come on. Unable to commit to direct install. So direct install is geared towards small to mid-sized buildings that come under the 200 kW average mark. So if we do see buildings on the application that are under there and ESIP and the campus metering may not apply, we ask the question, why not direct install? So depending on the answer, it may make sense for them to do LGEA first, depending on their timeline and what kind of work they want to do. We might just send them over to direct install. And then there's other, so that's a case-by-case basis that would require discussion with our team. With that, I'll pause, see if there's any questions from the group.
Amanda, we did have a couple of questions come in. You had mentioned nonprofits. Can hospitals go through LGEA?
Yep. So hospitals can come through LGEA. We've had a couple come through in the past year, as long as they are 501c3 tax exempt and can provide that information, then they're welcome to come through. And most hospitals are 501c3. So with that, we would require the letter from the IRS listing their tax exempt status and some tax ID matching there, with the tax ID is usually on that letter. So that's all we require, if that answers that.
Okay. Another question, is there a limit to the numbers and size of buildings that I can submit for an LGEA?
So we don't limit you, but to provide another background on our program, CAP, let's say, the cost of the audit is free to the applicant. So there's no cost on the applicant's part, but there is a cost associated with it on our part, and it factors by square footage and as well as building type, but mostly square footage. So if you have 45 buildings and the square footage doesn't equal over $100,000 when we do the pricing on our end, you can submit all of those. If the pricing comes out to over $100,000, then that's over the entity cap. So that would require discussion with the BPU to see if we would waive the cap or increase the cap, let's say, or if the entity would like to phase their buildings per fiscal year instead.
Got it. Okay. Finally, there was a question about ESIP. You mentioned financing available through Energy Savings Improvement Program. Does an LGEA automatically qualify me for that funding?
So the LGEA is a prerequisite for being eligible for ESIP, but basically once we do the audits and deliver the reports to the applicant, someone from the Board of Public Utilities would come out with us for that final exit meeting and discuss ESIP and next steps with the applicant. So if it makes sense,
Okay.
they would do the ESIP then, but it doesn't baseline requirement.
Got it. Okay. That looks like total of questions for at least this section.
Okay. So moving on to the building and utility data tab. So this is the instructions. You scroll down. This is our worksheet. So we're going to go column by column here, starting with the building name. So For some entities, it's pretty straightforward. Let's say school districts, school by school is a building. So we're looking here for the building. It does not go by account. So with other entities, like typically municipalities, you have a smattering of accounts, street lights, a light on a statue or something like that. And people might just go by account number. But if you scroll over, and I won't do that yet, we have lots of space for account numbers. So say this example, if there's 3 electric accounts here, you have room to put them all on the same line. So this should go by building, and it should be a structure with square footage. Moving to the right. Address, self-explanatory. This building type I left blank to show you there's a drop down. Year built, and again, this is why it's helpful to have someone knowledgeable about the buildings who's there every day, a facilities person, so they can tell you all of this information, because we do need all this information to give you the most accurate audit possible. So with that, we get to the utility information, and then I'm just gonna drag a bill over here. So I do have redacted version of bills for every rate paying utility that I can send to anyone who wants to look at that. But for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to use PSE&G because their territory covers a lot. And these are our internal training documents. So to show you, this is what we're looking at and what we need. So does the name match the applying entity? So this is the entity that's paying the bill. So we're looking to see if that name matches what's on the application. Does the account number match the account number that's listed for this building on the application? And does the service address match, or is it less than a mile away? So sometimes with PSE&G, it pings the address where the meter is actually located, and that could be slightly off. As long as it's less than a mile on Google Maps, you're fine. So scrolling down. So this is the electric here. So we're looking for the annual demand, which is over here. So when you're averaging that demand to figure out whether the building is eligible, you're looking at this number, not the kWh. And this is for just 1 month. So when we say average, you're looking over the course of 14 months, and you're going to average up the demand that you see listed for each of those invoices to get that figure. Societal benefits charge. So that's very important since that pays into the program. You want to just verify that you can see that line item on your bill when you're submitting. Okay. So you see only 4 spaces here. There is a spot to unhide it. So if you happen to have more per building and the application is locked, you can just reach out to us and we can unhide those columns for you. And then we can just add them in and send that back the application. So we'll get to that. I'm going to show you the gas bill for PSE&G. So same thing. This is where you find the therms, because we do ask you to add those up, as well as the costs. And going to the third-party supply column, that column on the application is a yes, no. So I'm just going to go into a little detail on how you can figure that out, with the caveat that it does vary depending on which third-party supply company it is and depending on which delivery company it is. And that might be a little confusing, but sometimes the supply is, you're getting it separate from the, let's say, PSE&G bill. Sometimes it's on the same bill. You see the delivery and the supply. In this case, if you scroll down, it's on the PSE&G bill, but this customer is getting supply from a third-party company. But since it's on the bill and the costs are here, It doesn't look like there's any separate invoices. In some cases, there's separate invoices, but that's another thing we're happy to work through with you if you're confused. And briefly, I just want to show what it looks like on a gas bill when you don't see the company there. So scrolling down, and again, these are our internal notes. So if other initials are okay, so you're looking for BGS. So New Jersey Natural Gas doesn't make it clear, but if you see BGS or BGGS on the bill here, it means supply is included. For this particular bill, it's not included, and you don't see the costs anywhere, unlike the PSE&G bill. So in that case, there are separate invoices you would want to be looking for that show the supply. So, and here's just the example of where it is on the bill. So BGS supply is included on the New Jersey Natural Gas bill. You don't have to go searching for separate invoices. I am going to take a pause there. That was a lot of information. If anyone has questions coming through.
Yeah, we did have a question, and it's in regards to, on the application, the building name. Does the building name have to exactly match service locations on the utility bill? And I think you had mentioned something about the fact that the street address needs to match the utility bill in the application, but in this particular case, the question had to do with the building name.
It depends. Some bills, I think JCP&L, sometimes on their master bill, they don't even list the building name necessarily, but sometimes, or most cases they do, and it could be a little off. Like say for this example, DPW garage. On the bill, maybe it just says garage, or maybe it says public works. So if it's off a little bit like that, that's fine. If the address listed for DPW garage is 123 Main Street, and then we see a bill that says 123 Main Street, but the name associated with it is something totally different, like Old Hamilton House or something. So if it's totally different, then it'll draw up a question to you. The LGA process is an ongoing conversation. So if we see something like that, we would ask you about it, customer about it. Maybe the answer is that's what it used to be, and then it got converted, but the utility never changed the name. So if it's something that makes sense like that, that's okay, but it's just a question.
Right, okay. Question regarding, I believe it was the New Jersey Natural Gas bill that you had up.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned the fact that what you're looking for is BGS or BGGS.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer to this, but do you know what those initials stand for?
Basic gas service supply, I believe. One of those,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think you had mentioned earlier something regarding the number of bills required for application. The question is, are summaries of the 14-month data okay? So rather than supplying with 14 monthly bills, can summaries be utilized?
So yes, some utilities offer just a summary bit, and I don't have an example here, but if anyone needs an example, I'm sure I have some. You can pull just an Excel sheet of the 14 months or most recent 13, I think PSE&G does. JCP&L will sometimes send a summary page just showing 24 months of bills. So we accept those. Sometimes it doesn't always have the data, depending on the columns and depending if the utility changes what they're doing. It doesn't show everything we need. It may come up later, this is missing a KW column or something like that. But generally, we do accept summaries as long as there's at least one invoice that shows the SBC line item, so we can verify that the entity pays into the program.
Okay, got it. Also related to bills, do the 14 months of bills have to end with the application month? I think what they're asking is, we asked for 14 current or recent months. Does that period end on the application month and then go, back 14 months, I think is what the question is. So what do we look for in terms of, okay, I gave you 14 months of bills, what period does that cover?
Yeah, we typically ask for the most recent 14 because that would give you the most accurate picture of the energy use in the most recent time that you've been utilizing the building. However, with the COVID situation and the shutdowns, we're asking for a set of bills prior to when the shutdown happened, because if we get a new application, say next month, and the most recent 14 shows April and March during when the shutdown happened, there's not going to be usage there. It's not going to give an accurate picture of typical usage. So in normal circumstances, yes, right now, just do the set up until the building shut down.
All right. I think that's it for now, but we'll be asking questions at the end again, so we'll check back. But I think you can move on to the next segment.
Just quickly here, other utility, if you do have fuel, oil, or propane in the building, these are all kind of yes or no, but we do require invoices for those that matches up with the data set that you provided on the electric and gas side. So we're asking for this, but we also want to see the purchases to verify. Solar panels. So this is a yes or no. We also required to know, do you own the panels? Do you lease the panels? If the panels are owned, there's typically some kind of tracking system for the annual generation. So we would need that monthly, again, matching the set from the electric and gas. If they're leased, then you would be receiving invoices from the company that they're leased from. So that's how we make that distinguishment. Number of computers. So all of this stuff, again, is something the facilities person would hopefully know. We would verify that, of course, but we do need that on the front end. Parking lot lighting. So if there's parking lot lighting included on the electric bill, we would take that into consideration for the audit, and you would just need to provide the size of the parking lot. Again, and for this note section, you can put, if you want to look into something, so here I just put the example, is it possible to look into insulation measures? You could put anything if you're interested in a microgrid or CHP or something like that, just let us know on the front end so we can discuss that with you and with the auditor. When it comes time, we can see if it's possible to take a closer look at certain things. And then you reach the end. So I'll pause for questions if any additional ones came in, Jim.
Yeah, we did actually get a couple more in. One of them had to do, you covered it a little bit in this section when you talked about street lighting. The question had to do with if my school has parking lot with lights or sports fields with lights. Can those be included in the LGEA?
Yep, so if there are lights that are in proximity to the structure that we're auditing, they can be included. Sometimes the energy that they use are included in the main meter. Sometimes they're unmetered. So unmetered bills don't have the SBC charge, but if they are at the same address as the building we're auditing that does pay into the SBC, we can lump that into our analysis. So yes.
Okay. Another question, again, I think it was related to this section, had to do with solar panels. If the solar panels are leased, do you need to have any information from that invoice or for the application, I should say?
Yeah, if I'm understanding, yeah, if they are leased, we do need the invoices and the information on those invoices.
Okay. Those are the remaining two questions for this section.
Okay, great. So last thing is the signature page. We cannot process the application without this, so just make sure you fill this. You do have to print it out and sign it by hand. If there's a designated representative, we would need their signature as well. So that was the last thing I had for this walkthrough.
Well, thank you again very much for taking us through the process. And actually, we do have another question that comes up, and this has to do with where we are in the process and in the grand scheme of things, essentially our LGEA audit's being conducted now, or if we sign up now, will we have to wait until the social distancing restrictions are lifted?
Yep, good question. So we're accepting applications and you don't have to wait is the short answer. If there's staff that is working and the buildings are accessible, we are offering a couple different options to get you through the audit right now, even though we can't physically go out to the site. So we're offering full virtual auditing. Facility staff or someone who has access would be able to actually get on a video call with our auditor and walk through the buildings if they're amenable to that. If we can't quite coordinate that, the other option is to send someone in, take pictures of the model labels, the meters, the equipment, send that over to us, equipment lists, that kind of thing. So we're offering a couple different options to work with entities that still want to get this audit done during this. And of course, on the other side of it, we obviously we're asking for all your utility data up front. So we're analyzing that regardless of whether people can get into the building, but we're hoping to conduct it that way in a remote format.
Okay, great. I'm going to take control again and take us just through the end of this particular webinar. We wanted to provide everyone with the contact information that Amanda had mentioned. The LGEA email is there, and that will go to either, I guess, Amanda yourself or to another account manager on the team. There's also a contact phone number that can be utilized to, again, get some one-on-one interaction with your applications. Because we do realize that there's a lot of information here, and it can get confusing once you start to get into the bills and that sort of thing. If for some reason we didn't get to your question today during the webinar, this is being recorded, and we will reach out to you directly. All the questions that come in are documented. I'd like to thank our presenter today, Amanda Munch, for her great work in presenting the LGEA application, and also to all of you on the call that took time to join us and learn about some of the details that make up the application process. And so with that, I would like to conclude today's webinar. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.